Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of ARCRaiders. I'm your host, Colors Fade. In the far future, humanity has lost the surface of the planet to environmental destruction, climate change, and a mechanical threat known as the Arc. You are one of the few who dare to raid the surface, battling the Arc machines, scavenging their parts, and then returning to the city of Speranza deep underground, where you turn your scavenged treasures into new equipment. But getting out alive means surviving not only the Arc, but also your fellow raiders. To put it simply, ARCRaiders is a PvPvE extraction shooter created by Embark Studios, based out of Stockholm, Sweden. Because it has both PvP and PvE elements, it has attracted a wide variety of gamers, some of whom are hardcore PvP fans and others who prefer the game's PvE aspect. But ARCRaiders is not one style of game, it's a blend, and it is this blend that makes it something special. The basic game loop is straightforward enough. You gear up, load into a map, evade or fight the Arc robots, loot as much as you can, then proceed to one of several fixed extraction points, hoping to escape with your loot before either the robots or another player kills you. And if you linger too long and the map's timer expires, an Arc orbiter lands and kills everyone who remains. The main threat on the map are the Arc, and they come in a variety of forms. There are several variants of drones, from scouts that blare an alarm to call in reinforcements, to huge rocketeers that can obliterate entire teams in short order. There are also mobile balls of destruction, tiny facehuggers, huge spiders that can leap tremendous distances, and larger, more destructive bosses that require coordination or smart planning to defeat. The maps in this game are big, intricate, and full of loot. They are, to my way of thinking, one of the game's strongest points. I love exploring them and learning the various zones of interest in exfil locations. It really is a beautiful game, and I found myself on more than one occasion just wanting to take a moment to breathe it all in, but lingering anywhere for too long is a dangerous proposition. The Arc are everywhere, and reinforcements are constantly raining down on the map. Additionally, the presence of other players creates a layer of unpredictability. Will they be friendly or shoot on sight? If they do act friendly, how do I know they're not going to betray me the moment I let my guard down? And that brings us to the first real sticking point that many people are going to have with this game. There's simply no way to talk about ARCRaiders without talking about the PvP aspect. And for a lot of people, this will be their red line. I understand that sentiment. I felt the same way before loading up ARCRaiders. PvP was something I never ever wanted to engage in. I've been gaming since Pong, and the only time I've ever enjoyed competitive gameplay was back in the late 80s when a group of us would compete against each other in Cyberball at the local arcade. That was the one and only time I ever really enjoyed competitive gaming. And I think a big reason I enjoyed that game is because of its transient nature. There was nothing to lose except my tokens and time. Put a pin in that idea. It will be important later. All of this begs the question, how am I, person who dislikes PvP, able to enjoy ARCRaiders? For starters, there's a fairly sharp divide between the amount of PvP you'll experience in solo play versus group play. When players enter a map solo, the game matches you up as best as it can with other solo players. You can run into a duo or a trio, but in my experience, this is a super rare occurrence. Solo players tend to be more friendly and cooperative. Obviously, not everyone is, and you do have to keep your guard up because you will find those folks who want to attack you. But I found that about 80 to 90% of players that I meet in solo play just want to accomplish their own objectives, and they're more than willing to be friendly and cooperative. That said, I have heard that on the EU servers, solo players are more likely to kill on sight, so that's something to be aware of. Fortunately, the game has proximity chat as well as an emote system, so even if you don't have a mic, you can still let other players know that you're peaceful and intend them no harm. I'm friendly, I see you. Proximity chat is great because a person's tone of voice can do a lot to convey their vibe and let you know if this is someone you can trust or not. He's got a very spooky voice. I don't trust him, but what can I do? Of course, players will use proximity chat and emotes to create a false sense of security before betraying you. Excellent, excellent, good job.
Let's get out of here.
I bet you can't talk this.
but in my experience, that's a rare occurrence and seems largely relegated to streamers farming for clips. More often than not, when a person lets you know they're friendly, they really are. Group play is another matter. Maybe it's because it's more difficult to manage everyone's nerves and inclinations, but there seems to be an unwritten rule in group play that you shoot first and ask questions later.
I had to get it on, man. He was making a move. I had to get it on.
Group play is basically a 100% kill on sight affair. I've yet to experience a trio attempting to be friendly. My son and I played as a duo for a while, and every time we attempted to be peaceful, we got shot at. So we've learned the hard way. In group play, you shoot first and ask questions later. If all of the PvP were as simple as using proximity chat or an emote to probe a player's disposition before one or both parties open fire, I don't think anyone would have a problem with the PvP in this game. In fact, after running with a few groups of really nice players, I've come to understand the appeal of PvP. It is thrilling, it's loaded with action. It gets my adrenaline pumping, probably more than my doctor would like. Unfortunately, there are players who will resort to underhanded tactics, like camping the exfil or booby-trapping the extraction controls, or even killing everyone after safely making it inside. And it's this last type of player who deserves contempt, because exfil happens so fast, there's literally no time to loot anyone you kill. So it makes zero sense to ice anyone who reaches the exit. At that point, they're only doing it because they derive pleasure from other people's misfortune. Personally, I'll never understand that motivation, but such is human nature. When you die, you lose everything you're carrying. Well, almost everything. Depending on what kind of loot kit you have equipped, you may have a small number of safe pockets, which preserve whatever items you elect to stow inside them. This is one of the ways that ARCRaiders makes itself feel less punishing, and I, for one, am glad this feature exists. I think this makes a huge difference in how it feels to play the game. It lessens the sting of dying when you can actually walk away with something for your effort. You will also gain experience from all the looting and shooting you do on the surface, and you can spend those experience points on various skills, which will make you a more effective raider. After a successful exfil, you'll return to Speranza, where you can turn your loot into new and better gear. All the weapons, shields, loot kits, healing supplies, grenades, and disposable devices can be crafted from one of several workbenches. Upgrading these workbenches also requires components, and the game offers an easy way to tag those components. So when you're digging through containers, you can quickly identify which items are the most important by looking for the little eye icon. Something else I want to mention here, there is a store in Speranza where you can purchase cosmetic items in exchange for currency that can be purchased with real-world money. This is the only way real-world money can be spent in this game. ARCRaiders has zero pay-to-win elements, microtransactions, or any other scummy contrivances that tend to plague online games. So, if you're worried about those kinds of things being in the game, don't be. In addition to upgrading your workbenches and building new weapons and gear, you'll also interact with a handful of NPCs. These will give you quests that reward you with loot and experience. But the real benefit is that by completing these quests, you'll explore and learn the maps. Quests frequently ask you to travel to very specific locations, often to perform some simple task, like loot a couple of drawers. The point isn't for you to loot the drawers, but to explore the map and learn something new about the area, and more importantly, to push players toward each other. Everything about ARCRaiders is designed to put players in proximity to one another. There is a lot of real estate to travel on these maps, but because of the quests and the high-value loot areas, players naturally gravitate toward one another. In addition, the sights and sounds of battle provide players with clues as to the location of a nearby conflict, and that, in turn, gives them a choice to either push toward the conflict and become part of it, or try and avoid it. What I've found most satisfying about the game is that every time I go out to raid, I have a purpose. It might be a quest given by an NPC, but it could just as easily be something self-directed. Perhaps an NPC needs you to explore a particular region and bring them back a particular item, but other times you may have a very personal objective you want to accomplish, like taking down a tough enemy who drops a specific component you need that will finally allow you to craft that weapon you've been coveting. Point being, at no time are you ever wondering what to do next. There's always something to do, and crossing things off your to-do list is very satisfying, except when you're dying. If, like me, you're new to this genre of game, you may initially be worried that if you die a lot, you'll eventually lose all of your weapons and become unable to fight on the surface. But ARCRaiders wisely offers the player an unrestricted number of free loadouts. These give players a basic low-level weapon and a few meager supplies for a trip up top. If you're careful and Lady Luck is on your side, you can walk out with a backpack full of loot that you can then turn into better weapons and equipment back in Speranza. I should also mention, these free loadouts are a great way to scout new maps. You will gain access to new regions as you progress through the game, and each of these areas are quite big, very detailed, and in places, very deadly. What you don't want to do is wander into these new and unknown regions with your best loot, having no idea how they're laid out, where the threats are, and how to find cover. You're far better off using a free loadout to explore, with the chance that you'll make it to exfil and actually extract with a pack full of loot. As time goes on, you'll scavenge loot, upgrade your workstations, and eventually begin acquiring better gear. And it's at that point that you might experience something called gear fear. This is a normal feeling. For the first 10 hours or so, I kept the most of my shiny new toys in my stash and only used the weakest equipment I owned. I was afraid of losing any of my good gear. And it wasn't just the fear of losing my gear that worried me. I was afraid of falling into a death spiral where I was constantly dying, losing all my gear, and never able to return with enough loot to improve my situation. But the reality is, the way the game is set up, that just won't happen. Even if you are a historically unlucky person and suck at PvP, like me, you will still accumulate quite a bit of loot at a fairly good clip. That said, I wasn't able to get over my gear fear until I had an epiphany. And that was realizing that your equipment in this game is not precious. It's meant to be transitory. Naturally, this goes against decades of conditioning brought on by other games. My multiplayer background is relegated to MMORPGs and more recently looter shooters. And in all of those games, we're taught that our gear is precious. When you receive a shiny new sword, a fancy cloak, or an assault rifle as a reward for a quest or defeating a boss, that equipment is meant to be coveted and never relinquished. But that's not how ARCRaiders works. Your loot is meant to expire and then be replaced. The simplest analogy I could come up with to understand this concept is that the equipment in ARCRaiders is a lot like golf balls. Most people have golfed at one point in time, and it doesn't take long to learn that you should have no attachments to a particular golf ball. Sure, it's nice to golf 18 holes and not lose a single ball, but the reality is most of us are gonna lose balls while we play. That's why we buy them in packs. We anticipate losing them, and we're ready to replace them when that happens. That is exactly how loot works in ARCRaiders. All your weapons, shields, loot kits, and other items are disposable. They're meant to be used and eventually lost. Your goal isn't to find or craft a super special weapon and then hang on to it for eternity. No, your goal is to learn a blueprint, then collect enough materials so you can craft that item several times over. Your goal is to build an arsenal of these things so that eventually, when you do lose a gun or a shield, you can immediately replace it, just like you would the golf ball that you put in the pond at 17. Once I got my head around this concept, ARCRaiders became a lot more fun. Loot is transitory, but that's okay. We're always raiding, always looting, and always building up our stockpiles of gear. The trick then is knowing when to strategically deploy your best equipment, and that's why the free loadout is so crucial. There are a lot of times when all you need to do is go scavenging for more materials, so you can craft a few more shields or a couple more weapons or some ammo, whatever. Other times, it makes sense to bring a good loadout, because you might be going into a hotly contested area with a lot of dangerous ARC and unpredictable raiders. And basically, that is the core game loop. Solo play is where you go to build up your arsenal of equipment so you can then use it with a team of friends in PvP. In both instances, both solo play and team play, anything and everything can happen. For years, we've had game developers tout emergent gameplay as some sort of holy grail, a fantastic gaming experience that is different every time. With ARCRaiders, this style of gameplay is actually a reality. Everything is unscripted, and every encounter is unique. Every raid to the surface is different from the last, and you never know what's going to happen. It's the definition of a game that keeps you on your toes. The best part of the game for me has been the interactions with other friendly players. Teaming up with random folks in solo mode to take down some of the tougher arcs has been an absolute blast. But I've also really enjoyed the group PvP too. I haven't felt that kind of adrenaline rush since the earliest days of EverQuest. ARCRaiders is a unique blend of multiple genres. It's a PvE game. It's a PvP game. It's an extraction shooter. The reality is it's all of these things rolled into one. However, it's not unique. Other games exist that have these elements. Tarkov and Hunt Showdown are extraction shooters that have been around for years. Helldivers 2 and Destiny 2 offer a ton of fun PvE content. And the landscape is rife with PvP shooters. So what makes ARCRaiders so special? In the simplest term, no other games combine all of these elements the way that ARCRaiders does. I said in a tweet that the best compliment I can give to ARCRaiders is that it managed to draw me in, and I'm someone who traditionally hates PvP. I'm not sure I'll ever enjoy it as much as other players, but I accept that it can be fun, and it certainly heightens the tension. Humans are unpredictable, and it's that unpredictability that gives ARCRaiders its edge. Still, in my mind, the real enemy is the Ark. The surface of the planet should be ours, so it's time to end this review, because I have machines to kill. Okay folks, that does it for my ARCRaiders review. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, drop questions and comments below, and consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, happy gaming everyone.